All right. Good afternoon, everyone. By my clock, I have noon, so we're going to officially get started with our release webinar for the Drive Electric Minnesota Electric Vehicle Incentives Database. Thank you so much for being here today. We will be covering a few things on today's webinar. We'll spend most of the time talking and walking through the actual database, and we will have time for questions and answers along the way. We will also give you some examples and go through some use cases on how you might use the database, and then we'll give you some resources and wrap up the webinar, and we might even wrap up before 1. So to get started, my name is Caitlin Bachland. I am the Senior Program Manager with the Great Plains Institute's Transportation and Fuels team. I also co-facilitate Drive Electric Minnesota, which is facilitated by the Great Plains Institute. So there's the relationship there in case you were wondering. But our mission is really to accelerate the adoption of electric vehicles in Minnesota. And we do that through a lot of different ways. We focus on education, we do outreach events, we collaborate with a lot of different parties throughout Minnesota. We facilitate coalition and committees, and we also spend a lot of time at the Capitol to advocate for policies that will help establish Minnesota as a national leader in electric vehicle adoption. And so, of course, on just the topic of education comes the database that we're all here to talk about today. So before we get launched into the content, just want to point out some housekeeping items. Throughout the presentation and the walkthrough today, please insert any questions that you have in the Q&A, which you should find in the lower kind of central toolbar. So you can throw your questions in there as you have them, and then we'll pause and answer the ones that we have time for during the Q&A portion. If you do want to or are interested in enabling closed captioning, you may do that by following the instructions on the screen here. There's also a little button where you can do that in your toolbar. All right, so getting into the content a bit, the database that we're here to talk about was designed and is maintained by Drive Electric Minnesota. We're really hoping for it to be a one-stop shop to help Minnesotans find all of the incentives that will help lower the cost of purchasing or leasing an electric vehicle, charging station, and more. I say and more because the database continues to grow. So as we find additional incentives about electric bikes, other things relating to electric vehicles, we will continue to add those to our database. Right now, it serves as a comprehensive list throughout the state of grants and other funding opportunities that are offered by utilities, nonprofits, private public partnerships, and state and federal agencies. And really anyone can use the database. We've got incentives in there for individuals as well as businesses, nonprofits, agencies, you name it. So just some fun facts about the database. Today, it's 147 incentives and growing. 93% on the database today are provided through utilities. So that could be either an electric vehicle incentive, like a rebate, or charging incentive. We also have 24% of those are electric vehicle incentives, 58% on the list are charging incentives, and then 18% are other, meaning they just didn't fall into either the electric vehicle or charging category. 59% are for individuals, so that means about 40% of the incentives are eligible to businesses, schools, tribal nations, and other groups. And our incentives really take the gamut of range here. So the lowest one on the list is $50 and it goes all the way up to 500,000 at least right now, and might even be more depending on which incentive you're looking at. All right, so with those out of the way, I'm going to turn things over to Chloe Karstensen. She's our Minnesota Green Corps member with the Great Plains Institute, and she has put just a ton of fantastic work into um, designing and maintaining the database. And so she's going to walk you through it, show you how to use it, and then we'll get into some use cases. So, Chloe, take it away. I'll stop screen sharing here so you can start and feel free to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Caitlin, for that introduction. I will share my screen right now. Can you see my screen?
Yep, it looks good.
Okay, sounds good. So this is our electric vehicle incentives database, as has already been mentioned, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of a brief direction of how to get to there from our website, the Drive Electric website. So you just hover your mouse over latest, then click on incentives, and then it will bring you to this page, which has other useful links such as our minnesotacharging.org website and a screen grab or screen, just a little preview of the table, and then as well as links to our user guide and addition form for the table. So if you would like to bring this table database into a full view, just click on view larger version, and then we'll wait for it to load. Then we'll go, and then it will pop up this full view of the table. So the incentives database is hosted by Airtable, which is just a program that allows you to compile data and organize it and filter it as you wish. So currently, the table or Airtable database is in kind of a spreadsheet view, but the nomenclature is a bit different. So for rows, they're referred to as records, and then records host information across all the fields, which are columns. So just to give you some reference for the different terminology that I will be referencing. And fields, we have 9 fields, I believe, in this database. I will go through them from left to right. First is name, which is just the title of the incentive and any incentive offered by utilities. I made sure to put the utility name first, as you can see below. So if you're looking for a utility-based or utility-specific incentive, you should be able to find it much more clearly based off of what pops up first. And then it has the rest of the name of the incentive. Then we have deadline, which is just when the incentives are due, and then amount, which just refers to the max amount for the funding opportunities. Then next we have geography, which is just where the incentive is offered, especially if it's utility based. We have the regions that those are based in, including also a statewide category as well. But the regions are based off of the CERT's focus areas. So if you want more information about whether or not your county is within that region, I would check for their definition of those focus areas. But I'll kind of show a little bit about, I'll go through the different regions a little bit or show them a little bit in the use case examples later on. Next is eligibility, which just refers to who is able to apply for these incentives. And as Caitlin mentioned, there are incentives for pretty much everyone in this database, but the majority are technically for individuals only. But as you can see, we also have incentives for businesses and local governments, schools, tribal nations. Then next, you have our description field, which just gives a brief overview about the funding opportunity. And then it will also, if you want any more information about the incentive, you can just click on the link to the right of the description and it will bring you to a page that has more information about that incentive and or a form, the application form to be able to apply for that incentive. Then we have our category field, which is just referring to which type of incentive is being offered. So currently the category field is what the table is grouped on, but which I'll go through what grouping exactly means later. But our categories are electric vehicle incentives, charging incentives, and other just more general or based incentives. Then we have type, which is just denoting what type of entity or kind of entity is offering this incentive. Most of our incentives are utility based, which is just because there are a lot of utilities in the state of Minnesota, and most, not all, I will say, but most utilities offer some sort of incentive. So I would check it out and see if your utility is offering anything for you. Then finally, we just have our last updated category, just for more transparency reasons of when the record was last updated. And I will say, as we're getting into the new year and new incentives, especially by utilities and amounts are being released, I will be updating those in the first few weeks to month. So I would, especially if it's more of a utility based incentive, be I would ask for a little bit of patience while I'm trying to work on updating those in the future. But if you are looking at an incentive and it hasn't been updated with any new information, just let us know about that in our edition form. So we'll go back and go through the features of the Airtable, and we'll also go left to right. So first is the hide fields tool, which just allows you to hide fields from the view. So I will hide last updated, um, and I will also hide description and deadline. So as you can see, those have been hidden from the view, and then you can click show all to undo that. And then also, if you would like to hide um, any just specific field, you can just click on the arrow and the drop down menu, and then click on hide field for that. Next is the filtering tool, which is pretty useful if you want to just filter out any more specific information or incentives for you. So we'll go through how to do that. So first you just click on add condition and then select which fields you would like to filter by. For this, we will filter by uh, geography. And then if you want to switch the operator, you can also do that by clicking on any of these, but we'll keep it as is for now. And then we'll do statewide, which I normally just click statewide for just best practice. So you can just see the ones offered for everyone. And then let's do Southwest. And then as you can see, the field will be highlighted in green, and then it will um, filter out any incentives that are not um, part of either the Southwest or statewide awards. And then also as like hide fields as well, you can also click filter by this field, and then you can filter by that field that you've clicked on. Next is the grouping tool, which currently the Airtable is already grouped by category, as we said, and grouped groupings are just group like grouping the incentives based off of the specific category or subset within the field. So, and they're kind of like drop down menus. So if you click on collapse all, they will be collapsed into just these different drop down menus, and then you can expand any of them that you would like. But you can also just go in and click expand all. But you can also add a subgrouping. So for this, I will add a subgrouping of type. And then, as you can see, within the electric vehicle incentives, they also grouped within the federal, state utility, and so on. And I will just remove that. Then we have our sorting tool, which I would recommend to sort by name, deadline, and amount specifically, just because it's a bit more useful, I would say, if you sort by these fields compared to the other fields. And also sorting is one that you have to play around with a bit more. So I would first sort by deadline, for instance, just because it's a much more general or has more general values. And then if you want to then sort by name, then it will be alphabetized within those deadlines, or you can then sort by amount, and then it will be organized numerically based off of when that incentive is due. Then next, you can also adjust the row height or the record height. So currently it's set to short, but you can expand it to medium, tall, or extra tall, just so you can get a more expanded view of the record and be able to see more of the description or also the full title as well if you would like, and the entities that are able to apply as well. And then we also have an option if you would like to share them, or potentially if it would be easier to read or be easier to access the information offered by the Airtable, you can download it or you can print the current view that you're in. Then finally, we have the search tool. So you can just click on the magnifying glass. And then for this example, I will just search on school. And then it will highlight the different cells that have school in them. And then also will highlight the beginning of the record or row that has the word. And then finally, I just have one more thing to show you, which is just how to expand the view further of a specific or single record. So how to do that, you would just hover your mouse over a row or record and then click on this blue arrow icon, and then you will see the whole entire record and with all the informations from the different fields here. And I will say this is the one way within the Airtable for you to be able to use a screen reader by is by expanding the record or view, and then you can also go um, up or down throughout the table by clicking on these arrows. So that is just a walkthrough. Are there any questions?
Yeah, thanks, Chloe. People are welcome to insert any questions that you have into the Q&A, and then we'll address any that come in. As of right now, I'm not seeing any. So, okay, here's
Oh,
a question. If you want to print the view, does it shrink the columns to fit on one page, or does it print on multiple pages?
I have not tried to print it, so I can say I'm not exactly sure, but we can see exactly what the preview would look like right now. That would just be easier. And then see if there's,
So it looks like you can adjust
yeah,
how you want it printed. I'm guessing if you change the field sizing, there might be a way to, shrink the scale of the database.
yeah.
Um,
Oh,
yeah.
it is printed in multiple pages, but you can obviously too, for instance, I would assume if you filter it, it would be less pages if you just do a more specific filter or if you just want a specific page too. Um, but it prints the entire table.
All right, and we have another question. Does deadline mean the start or the end date?
The
It
end
means
date
the
of
end
what?
date. Yeah.
Yes.
And we can, if it would be helpful, we can add start dates into the database. We don't always know when an incentive starts. Some like if it's a request for proposals or state or federal uh, incentives, those are a little bit more clear cut in terms of having a start and end date. But not all incentives indicate on their website when they started. So usually we can find a deadline at least. All right. Any more questions? If not, we can move into some use case scenarios,
Yes.
and that might
And
spur additional questions.
yeah, if you are willing to, for instance, use yourself as an example, I can do a use case scenario based off of that or your business or and just whatever organization you're representing as an example. I can do that, but I also have some pre-prepared use case scenarios too, but I would just wanted to float out that option there first.
So that's your cue. If you
Yeah.
came here looking for a specific incentive and you want us to help you find it, let us know in the Q&A. And while people are maybe thinking of those, Chloe, do you want to go to the first one? Just cover the first use
Yes.
case that you had in mind?
Yeah, so I will do one that's in the user guide, and we are also going to put in blog that is associated with the release. So this is just if you're a resident living in Rochester. So first you can filter by, um, I did geography and then select statewide and southeast, and then added another filter because you can add multiple filters. And this is for an individual, so we would just select individual. And then I added sorted based off of deadline and amount. And that's how you could see different incentives for if you are looking to purchase for an electric vehicle, and then also just charger costs as well. And if I remember correctly, Rochester also has public utilities has an incentive too.
Great. And we did get a suggestion from the audience. So can you go over how to find an incentive or incentives that are available for the city of Minneapolis? And I assume, um, Eric, you mean the city of Minneapolis proper, so like a local government.
So do I would place a filter again based off geography, um, statewide and metro. And then eligibility is just for local governments. And so then you would select that. And then I just always sort as best practice. So it's just a bit more organized by deadline um, and amount. And these are the incentives available for City of Minneapolis local government.
And so from here, users will need to kind of look through the list and see what might apply, um, you know, whether they're specifically eligible for a specific incentive or not, but at least this will get you part of the way. So it doesn't completely answer the question for you, but it will at least help narrow down possible incentives.
Are there any other brave souls that want to be that are looking for incentives and would like help to help find incentives? Otherwise, I can do one or two more. I will go on to the next one since I saw that we had a lot of local governments registered. I chose specifically Winona, City of Winona. So again, the filtering tool is probably going to be your best friend for finding incentives within this database. So I would filter by geography, again, statewide, and then southeast, and then again, eligibility is local government, then sort by deadline and amount. And these are the incentives that are available for that region specifically. I'm not exactly sure which utility Winona is part of or the surrounding area. So you would also have to look at that for more specific guidance. But these are other incentives offered. Then I will do one more for our any commercial customers or users. So let's say you would like to electrify your fleet and you're a business in Otter Tail County. So again, you go under filter and then filter by geography, and it would be statewide and central. Then We would also do eligibility since it is a business, and then we'll also do for profit as well. And then we can sort by deadline so you can see the closest deadlines and then amount. And this shows the different incentives offered, more specifically electric vehicles. But also if you scroll down or if you collapse the EV incentive menu, you can also see charging incentives offered in your region. Are there any other questions or anything you'd like to bring up or concerns about the database?
I'm not seeing anything else in the Q&A. So thanks so much, Chloe, for walking everyone through the database. And I think we can go to our closing slides. All right. So just a few slides to close us out here. We wanted to highlight some upcoming deadlines for everyone. The first one, of course, is due today. So if you weren't already aware of it, probably not enough time to apply for it. But that's the MPCA Clean Heavy Duty Off-Road Equipment Grant. So that one is due today. There are also numerous utility provided incentives that, at least right now, have a deadline of December 31st because they were tied to the 2023 calendar year. And we anticipate that many of those utilities are going to be providing the same or similar incentives in 2024. So as Chloe mentioned earlier, we'll be updating our database as we learn about those incentives in January. But that's just a note that, if you're thinking about making a vehicle or charging purchase before the end of the year, please do take advantage of those incentives. We also have the EPA Clean School Bus Rebates Program with a deadline of January 31st. So if you know any schools in the area that are looking to take advantage of getting an electric school bus, that would be a great opportunity to do that. Deadline is coming up next month. And then lastly, the one I'll highlight today is the Minnesota National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Request for Proposals just came out, I want to say last week on Monday, and that one has a deadline of February 9th. The state is covering up to 90% of those costs. So if you know of any potential site hosts or charging providers looking to take advantage of this program and install high-powered DC fast charging stations along those alternative fuel corridors, let them know about this RFP, and there's more information available in the database. It'll point you to a link on the on MnDOT's website about this RFP and all the details. So those are just some quick deadlines for all of you to be aware of. We are thinking of potentially rolling out like a weekly or bi-weekly funding snapshot. Nothing confirmed yet, but if that is something that you would be interested in, please let us know. We can work on teeing up a mailing list for anyone that's interested in something like that. Okay, and we dropped the link in the chat earlier during the webinar, but you can all access the database. It's live today. So head over to Drive Electric Minnesota's website and you can go to the incentives tab. It's just the drop down under the latest and you'll find it there. And please do know, let us know as you're using this database, if you have any feedback for us, we are more than happy to take any suggestions, any improvements. So just let us know if you have any suggestions for us. And that is it. So thank you all for attending the webinar. We will get the recording of today's webinar up on YouTube as soon as we can. So it'll be available if you want to check it out later. And if you think of a question that you didn't get an opportunity to ask today, you can reach out to either Chloe or I, and we will try our best to answer them. And then lastly, we will send you all the links to the database, the user guide. We'll be getting a short blog post up, kind of like another how-to blog post up, hopefully tomorrow. So we'll get you all those resources in your inboxes, and let us know as you're using the database if you have any improvements for us. But thanks for being here today, and happy holidays.